Dominarch Thexel had ruled the Nexari Empire for over 3,000 years. In all that time, he had never encountered a species that required more than a simple show of force to bring into line. The massive viewing chamber of his flagship displayed the small blue world below, and he felt only contempt for the beings who dared to challenge the Confederation's authority. "Status report," he commanded in the ancient Nexari language that few other species were permitted to learn. "All attack squadrons are in position," Dominarch, his fleet commander, replied. "The planet's major population centers have been targeted. We can begin bombardment on your order." "And the surface fleet?" "Still maintaining position around the planet, their technology readings remain unusual." Thexel's 6 eyes focused on the tactical display. The human vessels were tiny compared to his battle fleet, and there were only a few dozen of them. But his sensor operators had been reporting strange readings for the past hour. The human ships seemed to exist in multiple locations at once, and their energy signatures made no sense according to known physics. "No matter," Thexel decided. "Primitive tricks cannot stand against the might of the Confederation. Begin the attack." Down on Earth, Dr. Hyunwoo Kim watched the alien fleet begin to move into attack formation. The United Nations building had been evacuated except for the diplomatic teams and essential personnel. Through the large windows, he could see people in the streets looking up at the sky where lights were beginning to appear as the alien ships powered their weapons. "Dr. Yoon," Admiral So Young Park said into her communicator. "How long before they're in firing position?" "About 3 minutes," came the reply from the research station. "But don't worry. We've been planning for this scenario for decades." President Lee looked at the alien delegation, who were huddled together speaking in urgent whispers. "Ambassador Velthar, is there any way to stop this?" The crystal being turned toward him, light patterns cycling rapidly through his translucent body. "Once a Dominarch has decided on military action, nothing can stop it except total surrender or total victory." "Then I guess we know what we have to do," Prime Minister Choi said quietly. Captain Minsu Kang was monitoring a handheld device that showed the positions of all ships in the solar system. "Dr. Yoon, permission to engage?" "Granted. Show them what humanity has learned about the universe." What happened next would be discussed in alien military academies for centuries to come. It began when every human ship in the solar system simply vanished from normal space. The Confederation fleet's sensors suddenly showed empty space where moments before there had been dozens of human vessels. "Where did they go?" Thexel demanded. "Unknown, Dominarch," his sensor operator replied. "They are no longer registering on any of our detection systems." Then the human ships began reappearing, but not where they had been before. They materialized throughout the Confederation fleet, sometimes appearing directly between larger alien vessels. But instead of firing weapons, they did something much more disturbing. One of the Nexari heavy cruisers suddenly found itself surrounded by a shimmering field of energy. Within seconds, the massive warship began to shrink. Not destroyed, not damaged, but actually becoming smaller. In less than a minute, a ship that had been 2 kilometers long was reduced to the size of a small shuttle. "What's happening to the destroyer?" Thexel roared. "It appears to be compressed, Dominarch," his science officer reported. "The ship is intact, but all of its dimensions have been reduced by a factor of approximately 100. On another part of the fleet, 3 Confederation frigates simply vanished only to reappear orbiting Earth's moon. Then they disappeared again and reappeared near Mars. Then Jupiter. The human ships were moving Confederation vessels around the solar system like pieces on a game board. But the most shocking demonstration was happening to Thexel's own flagship. The massive Dominarch vessel suddenly found itself unable to move. Its engines were running at full power, but the ship remained perfectly stationary. "Engineering report," Thexel commanded. "Sir, our engines are functioning normally," the chief engineer reported. "But we appear to be locked in position by some kind of gravitational anchor. The space around our ship has been altered, Dr." Taemin Yoon's voice suddenly filled the bridge of every Confederation ship in the fleet. "Dominarch Thexel, this is Dr. Yoon of the Earth Defense Network. We are not attacking your vessels. We are simply demonstrating that your weapons cannot harm us. And your ships cannot leave this system without our permission. Impossible, Thexel snarled. No species possesses technology advanced enough to manipulate space-time on this scale. With respect, Dominarch, Dr. Yoon replied, your understanding of what's possible may be somewhat limited. To prove her point, something extraordinary happened next. The Dominarch's flagship, all 3 kilometers of it, suddenly rotated 90 degrees. Not slowly, not with the groaning of stressed metal, but instantly and smoothly, as if the concept of inertia had been temporarily suspended. We could have rotated your ship inside out if we wanted to, Engineer Hyojin Nam's voice added to the communication. But we thought that might make you uncomfortable. Back in the United Nations building, Ambassador Velthar and his companions were staring at the tactical displays in complete shock. General Korath's scales had turned almost white, and Commander Nexus was flickering between energy and solid form so rapidly that he was almost invisible. This is impossible, Velthar whispered. Young species don't develop technologies like this. It takes millions of years of guided evolution to achieve such mastery over fundamental forces. Maybe, Dr. Hyunwoo Kim suggested, the problem is the word guided. Maybe species develop faster when they're allowed to find their own path. Admiral Dayun Lim's voice came through the communication system from her position aboard the lead human vessel. Dominarch Thexel, we are prepared to release your ships and allow you to return to Confederation space. But first, we need to establish some new rules for this relationship. Rules? Thexel's voice was strangled with rage and confusion. You dare to dictate terms to the Confederation? We're not dictating anything, Admiral Lim replied calmly. We're negotiating. But to negotiate effectively, both sides need to understand what the other is capable of. To emphasize the point, Dr. Jae-hyun Oh activated one of humanity's most impressive technologies. High above the Confederation fleet, space itself began to ripple. What appeared to be a new star ignited in the darkness, burning brightly for exactly 10 seconds before winking out. That was a controlled matter-energy conversion, Dr. Oh explained to the stunned alien fleet. We converted approximately 1 ton of cosmic debris into pure energy, then contained and dissipated that energy safely. If we had wanted to, we could have done the same thing to your ships. The communication channels fell silent for several minutes. When Dominarch Thexel finally spoke again, his voice had lost all of its arrogance. What do you want from us? Fleet Admiral Sang-Ho Bei, commander of Earth's space forces, answered from his flagship near Jupiter. We want the same thing. We wanted 3 days ago, Dominarch. We want to be left alone to develop as we choose. But we also want to establish peaceful relations with other species who are willing to treat us as equals. Equals? The word seemed to cause Thexel physical pain. Yes, President Lee said, speaking directly to the Dominarch. Equals. We have no interest in conquering or ruling other species, but we also won't accept being conquered or ruled ourselves. General Wan-Sik Jang, monitoring the situation from the Seoul Defense Command, added his own perspective. We understand that this is difficult for you to accept, Dominarch. Your entire civilization is based on hierarchy and dominance. But perhaps it's time for the galaxy to try a different approach. The Confederation fleet remained frozen in space, held in place by technologies they couldn't understand or counter. But humanity had made their point without firing a single shot or causing a single casualty. The war that everyone had expected was over before it began. Now the real work would start, building a new kind of relationship between species that had never seen each other as equals before. 6 months after the day that changed everything, Ambassador Su Min Han walked through the corridors of the newly constructed Galactic Cooperative Headquarters. The massive space station orbited peacefully between Earth and Mars, built jointly by human and alien engineers who had learned to work together as equals. The station itself was a marvel of cooperation. Human gravity manipulation technology had been combined with Alterian crystal-growing techniques and Nexari energy systems to create something beautiful and functional. Species that had spent millennia as rulers and subjects were now learning to be partners. Sumin paused at a large viewing window that looked out toward Earth. Dozens of ships moved peacefully through the space lanes, carrying representatives from 17 different species. The old Confederation had dissolved within 3 months of humanity's demonstration of power, replaced by something that had never existed before, a true alliance of equals. "The morning briefing is ready, Ambassador," her assistant, Dr. Yujin, said as she approached. Yujin had been appointed as the cooperative's first science coordinator, responsible for managing the exchange of knowledge between species. "How many new applications today?" Sumin asked as they walked toward the main conference chamber. 14, Yujin replied. "Word has spread throughout the galaxy about what we're building here. Species that have been under Confederation control for thousands of years are asking to join the cooperative." The conference chamber was filled with beings that would have been impossible to imagine working together just months before. Dominarch Thexel sat at the same table as Ambassador Velthar, both of them listening carefully to a presentation by Dr. Hyunwoo Kim about humanity's latest medical breakthrough. "The cellular regeneration process can be adapted for any carbon-based life form," Hyunwoo was explaining. "We've already tested it successfully on volunteers from 6 different species. And you're offering this technology freely to all cooperative members?" asked Commander Nexus, whose energy form was now stable and bright, rather than the flickering anxiety it had shown during their first meetings. "Of course," Hyunwoo replied. "Knowledge shared is knowledge multiplied." General Korath, whose scales had returned to their normal metallic color, leaned forward. "In the old Confederation, advanced medical technology was restricted to senior species only. The Nexari controlled who could have access to life extension treatments." Thexel shifted, uncomfortably in his chair. The former Dominarch was still adjusting to his new role as an equal member of the cooperative, rather than its absolute ruler. "The hierarchy existed to maintain order," he said defensively. "The hierarchy existed to maintain control," corrected Captain Minsu Kang, who now served as the cooperative's military coordination officer. "But we've proven that cooperation works better than control." This was true in ways that continued to surprise everyone. The elimination of the rigid Confederation hierarchy had unleashed a wave of innovation and creativity that was transforming the galaxy. Species that had been forbidden from developing certain technologies were now making breakthroughs that benefited everyone. Admiral So Young Park entered the chamber carrying a data tablet with the latest reports from across cooperative space. "The Alterian scientists have successfully combined their crystal growing techniques with human nanotechnology," she announced. "They've created a new type of construction material that can build structures that repair themselves." "That's wonderful," said engineer Hyejin Nam, who had been promoted to head the cooperative's engineering division. "We can use that for the new colony ships we're designing." The colony ships were another example of what cooperation could achieve. Instead of the Confederation's policy of restricting species to their home systems until they proved themselves worthy, the cooperative was helping any species that wanted to explore and settle new worlds. "Speaking of colony ships," Dr. Taemin Yoon said, entering the chamber with her usual confident stride, "I have an interesting proposal from the Zephyrian Republic." The Zephyrians were one of the newest members of the cooperative, a species of flying beings who had been held back by Confederation restrictions for centuries. In just 4 months of freedom, they had developed new atmospheric processing techniques that could make barren worlds habitable. "They want to organize a joint expedition beyond the galaxy's edge," Taemin continued. "A mixed crew of humans, Zephyrians, and whoever else wants to join. Their goal is to explore the possibility of intergalactic travel." The room fell silent. Even with all the changes of the past months, the idea of leaving the galaxy entirely was breathtaking. Velthar's crystal body pulsed with slow, thoughtful light patterns. In 50,000 years of Confederation history, no one ever suggested anything so ambitious. "Maybe that's because no one was allowed to think that big," suggested General Wansik Jang, who had been appointed as the cooperative's strategic planning director. President Lee, now serving as Earth's representative to the Cooperative Council, smiled at the familiar pattern. "Every time we think we've reached the limits of what's possible, someone discovers we were thinking too small." This had become humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy, not their technology, but their perspective. Human beings seemed incapable of accepting that anything was truly impossible. When other species said something couldn't be done, humans asked, "Why not?" and then set about proving it could be done. "The expedition proposal has merit," Admiral Dayun Lim said from her position as head of Cooperative Defense Forces. "But it would require new types of ships and technologies that don't exist yet." "Then we'll create them," Dr. Jae Hyun-oh said matter-of-factly. "We've created everything else we needed." This confidence was spreading throughout the galaxy. Species that had spent millennia accepting limitations were now questioning everything. The result was an explosion of scientific and cultural advancement that was beyond anything the galaxy had ever experienced. Fleet Admiral Sang-ho Bae brought up the latest status reports on his tablet. "I have updates from our humanitarian missions," he announced. "The food shortage on Zerion Prime has been resolved using human agricultural techniques. The energy crisis on the Talarian worlds was solved with a combination of human fusion technology and Nexari power distribution systems." These humanitarian missions had become one of the cooperative's most important activities. Instead of using superior technology to control other species, they used it to help solve problems and improve lives. The result was a steady stream of former Confederation worlds asking to join the new alliance. As the meeting continued, Sumin reflected on how much had changed. The beings in this room had once been part of a rigid hierarchy where some species ruled and others obeyed. Now they worked together as equals, each contributing their unique strengths to solve common challenges. The transformation hadn't been easy. Many species had struggled to adjust to the idea that they were neither rulers nor subjects, but partners. Some former Confederation leaders had tried to maintain the old ways, but they quickly found themselves isolated as their own people embraced the freedom to think and act independently. "There's one more item on today's agenda," Dr. Yoo-jin Seo announced. The request from the Andromedan Federation. This caused a stir throughout the chamber. The Andromedan Federation was from a completely different galaxy, and their message had arrived just days before through quantum communication channels that shouldn't have been possible to detect. "They've heard about what we're doing here," Yoo-jin continued. "They want to establish diplomatic relations with the cooperative." Captain Kang looked up from his data display. "Diplomatic relations with another galaxy? That's impossible?" Dr. Hyun-woo Kim asked with a grin. "I think we've proven that impossible just means no one has figured out how to do it yet." The meeting ended with plans for humanity's most ambitious project yet, building a ship capable of traveling to another galaxy. It would require technologies that didn't exist and solve problems that had never been encountered. In other words, it was exactly the kind of challenge that humanity loved. As the representatives dispersed to their various duties, Sumin remained at the viewing window, looking out at the peaceful traffic moving between the planets. 6 months ago, Earth had faced the choice between slavery and extinction. Today, humanity was leading a galactic alliance toward adventures that had never been dreamed of. Admiral Park joined her at the window. "Any regrets about how things turned out?" Sumin smiled. "The only regret I have is that it took the galaxy so long to discover that the universe is much bigger and more wonderful than anyone imagined." In the distance, a new ship was departing from Earth's orbital shipyards. It was a joint construction project involving 12 different species, designed to explore the empty space between galaxies. Its captain would be human, but its crew would represent the best minds from across the cooperative. The galaxy had spent 50,000 years believing that some things were impossible. Humanity had taught them that the only real impossibility was thinking too small. As the ship disappeared into the distance, beginning its journey toward discoveries that no one could predict, the representatives of 17 different species continued their work of building something that had never existed before. Admiral Lee Tae-ho stood on the bridge of Luna Station, watching the stars through the massive viewing window. The year was 2387, and humanity had finally made it to 17 different star systems. It had taken them 300 years to get this far, but they were proud of what they had built. Mining colonies floated around distant asteroids. Research stations orbited alien worlds. Cargo ships moved between the systems like busy ants carrying supplies. Dr. Park Ji-woo was on Mars that morning, studying strange bacteria they had found in the ice caves. She loved her work. Every day brought new discoveries about life in the universe. Her team had found 12 different types of alien microbes in the past month alone. The universe was full of life, and Park Ji-woo wanted to understand all of it. Commander Kim Soo-jin was having a normal day on her exploration ship, the New Soul. Her crew was mapping a new system near the edge of human space. They had been out there for 6 weeks taking pictures of planets and checking for valuable minerals. It was quiet work, but Soo-jin enjoyed the peace of deep space. Then everything changed. The first sign of trouble came from the sensors. Lieutenant Yoo Han-sol, who was watching the long-range scanners, suddenly sat up straight in his chair. His face went pale as he stared at his screen. "Commander," he said in a shaky voice, "you need to see this." Soo-jin walked over to look at the display. What she saw made her heart race. 2 massive fleets were coming out of hyperspace at the same time. The ships were huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built. There were hundreds of them, and they were heading straight for human space. "Send a message to Luna Station right now," Soo-jin ordered. "Tell them we have unknown ships approaching." The alien fleets were different from each other. One group had ships that looked like they were made of crystal. They sparkled and shined in the starlight like giant diamonds. The other fleet had ships that looked alive somehow. They were dark and curved, with surfaces that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. On Luna Station, Admiral Lee Tae-ho got the message and felt his stomach drop. He had been preparing for this day his whole career, but he had hoped it would never come. Humanity was still young in space. They had good ships and brave crews, but they were nothing compared to the old alien empires that ruled the galaxy. "Get me Dr. Park Ji-woo on Mars," he told his communication officer, "and send word to all our colonies. Tell them to prepare for possible evacuation." The crystal ships belonged to something called the Valari hegemony. They had been traveling between stars for over 10,000 years. Their technology was so advanced that they could absorb energy from weapons and use it to make themselves stronger. They ruled 300 star systems and had never lost a war. The living ships belonged to the Thrak Collective. They were even older than the Valari. Their ships could change shape and heal themselves when damaged. They could adapt to any attack and learn from every battle. They controlled over 400 worlds and thought of other species as either useful tools or annoying pests. Commander Soo-jin tried to contact the alien fleets, but they ignored her signals. Instead, something incredible happened. A voice appeared in her mind, speaking without words. It was cold and felt like ice water flowing through her thoughts. "Small creature," the voice said, "you will move your primitive vessel away from our path. Your species has illegally occupied territory that belongs to the Valari hegemony. You have 72 hours to evacuate all systems beyond your birth world." At the same time, another voice entered her mind. This one felt different, like oil sliding through her brain. "The Thrak Collective claims the remaining systems. Your species will leave or be removed. Resistance will result in complete elimination." Soo-jin tried to respond, but the voices were already gone. The alien ships moved past her small vessel like she was invisible. They were heading for the heart of human space. On Mars, Dr. Park Ji-woo was pulled away from her microscope by an urgent call from Admiral Lee Tae-ho. When she saw his face on the screen, she knew something terrible was happening. "Doctor, we have a situation," the Admiral said. "2 alien fleets have entered our space. They're demanding that we evacuate all our colonies within 3 days. Park Ji-woo felt cold. She had always known that humans might meet older, stronger species someday. But she had hoped they would be peaceful, like the microbes she studied. These aliens sounded like they wanted to wipe humanity from the stars. Captain Choi Min-ho was commanding the heavy cruiser Busan's Pride when the aliens demonstrated their power. 3 human destroyers tried to intercept a small group of crystal ships. The destroyers were good ships with experienced crews, but what happened next showed how outmatched humanity really was. The Valari ships didn't even slow down. Beams of silver light shot out and touched the human vessels. The destroyer's engines stopped working, their weapons powered down. Their life support systems failed. In less than a minute, 3 of humanity's best warships were floating dead, in space. The crystal ships moved on without stopping to help the crews or take prisoners. To them, humans were not worth the effort of capture. They were just an obstacle to be removed. Choi Min-ho ordered his ship to rescue the destroyer crews, but his hands were shaking as he watched the alien fleet continue toward Earth. His cruiser was bigger and newer than the destroyers, but he knew it would last no longer against those silver beams. News of the alien arrival spread through human space like wildfire. On every colony world, people looked up at the stars with fear. Parents held their children closer. Miners and farmers wondered if they would have homes tomorrow. Admiral Lee Tae-ho called an emergency meeting of all human fleet commanders. The faces on his screen showed the same mix of fear and determination that he felt in his own heart. They think we're primitives, he told his officers. They think we're so weak that we'll just run away when they tell us to. Maybe they're right about our technology, but they don't understand what it means to be human. Dr. Park Ji-woo joined the meeting from Mars. She had been studying the recordings of the alien contact. Admiral, I've been looking at their ships. They're incredibly advanced, but they're also very old. Sometimes being old means being set in your ways. Commander Kim Soo-jin was still in her exploration ship, watching the alien fleets move through human space like they owned it. Her crew was scared, but they were also angry. These aliens had come into their home and told them to leave like unwanted guests. The crystal beings called themselves the Valari. They lived inside their ships like spirits inside jewels. They had forgotten what it was like to struggle or fight for survival. Everything came easily to them now. The biomechanical creatures were the Thrak. They had merged with their machines so long ago that they couldn't remember being anything else. They saw other species as raw material to be processed or obstacles to be eliminated. Both alien races had one thing in common. They had read humanity's file in the Galactic Council's database. According to the records, humans were a new species that had barely learned to travel between stars. They used simple fusion engines and basic metal weapons. They had no psychic powers, no energy shields, and no advanced technology worth mentioning. So, aliens expected humanity to surrender quickly and quietly. It would be easier for everyone that way. But the aliens had made a mistake. They judged humanity by their technology, not by their spirit. They saw the age of human civilization and assumed they were dealing with children. They counted human ships and thought numbers told the whole story. They didn't understand that humans had spent their entire history fighting against impossible odds. They didn't know that humanity's greatest strength had never been their weapons or their ships. It was their refusal to give up, even when giving up was the smart thing to do. The 72-hour deadline was counting down. Soon, the aliens would learn what humans really were. The Galactic Council's records on humanity filled less than one data crystal. The file was marked as minor species, recently emerged, and contained basic information that made the aliens feel very confident about their mission. According to the database, humans had only been in space for 400 years. Their fastest ships could barely reach half the speed of light. They used crude fusion reactors for power and threw metal bullets at their enemies. Most embarrassing of all, they still lived on only one planet until very recently. High Admiral Zelthar of the Valari hegemony read the file while floating in his crystal chamber. His body was made of living diamond, and his thoughts moved at the speed of light through quantum crystals. To him, humans seemed like insects that had just learned to fly. These creatures are using technology that we abandoned 20,000 years ago, he told his war council. Their weapons cannot even scratch our shields. This will be finished before the next stellar cycle. Overmind Grakthul of the Thrak Collective was equally dismissive. His consciousness was spread across 100 biomechanical bodies, each one more advanced than any human technology. He had personally conquered 47 species, and most of them had been far more dangerous than these new humans. The biosignatures show they are still entirely organic, he reported to his swarm leaders. No technological enhancement, no genetic optimization, No neural implants. They are exactly as nature made them. Pathetic. The two alien leaders met in neutral space to divide up human territory. They had done this many times before with other weak species. It was always easier when there was no competition between the conquerors. "I will take the systems with the mining colonies," Zelthar announced. "The Valari have need of those raw materials." "The Thrak claim the agricultural worlds," Grekthul replied. "The organic matter will feed our bioships." They agreed to split the human military assets as well. The Valari would study human computer systems to understand how such primitive technology could function. The Thrak would examine human biology to see if there were any useful traits worth harvesting. Neither alien leader thought the division would be difficult to enforce. Humans were too weak to resist and too scattered to organize effective defense. The war would be over in days, maybe hours. On Earth, General Park Hae-young was reading the same intelligence reports that filled her with dread. She was the highest-ranking military officer in human space, and she knew exactly how outmatched her forces were. The alien fleets had enough firepower to destroy every human ship 10 times over. The Terran Congress was meeting in emergency session. Representatives from every human colony were arguing about what to do. Some wanted to negotiate. Others suggested immediate evacuation to the far edges of space. A few even proposed surrendering completely and hoping for mercy. "We should try to talk to them," said Representative Chen Wei-ming from the Titan colony. "Maybe they don't understand that we're intelligent beings. Maybe this is all a misunderstanding." "They've already shown us what they think of our intelligence," replied Representative Lagos from the asteroid belt. "They disabled our ships like toys. We need to run while we still can." General Park Hae-young listened to the debate for 2 hours before she finally stood up. The entire assembly fell silent when she walked to the speaking platform. Everyone knew her reputation. She had fought in the Mars Rebellion and the Asteroid Wars. She had never retreated from a battle in her entire career. "My fellow humans," she began, her voice calm but strong. "I understand the fear that fills this room. I feel it too. But I want to remind you of something important. Our ancestors faced impossible odds many times before." She touched the Korean flag pin on her uniform. "My great-grandmother lived through the Japanese occupation. Her parents survived the Mongol invasions. Before them, our people faced Chinese armies, Russian expansion, and a dozen other enemies who thought we were too small and weak to matter." The assembly was completely quiet now. Every time the invaders were stronger. Every time they had better weapons and more soldiers. Every time they expected us to surrender quickly and quietly. And every time they learned that strength isn't just about numbers and technology. She paused and looked around the room. "These aliens think we're primitives because we've only been in space for 400 years. They think we're weak because our ships are smaller than theirs. They think we'll run away because that's what weak species do. But they don't understand what it means to be human." Representative Kim Jun-ho from the Europa station raised his hand. "General, what are you suggesting? That we fight a war we cannot win?" "I'm suggesting we fight a war they cannot understand," Park Hae-young replied. "They know our technology, but they don't know our spirit. They can count our ships, but they can't measure our determination. They think this will be easy, and that might be their biggest mistake." Dr. Yoon Jae-min had been quiet during the debate, but now he stood up. As head of humanity's most secret research division, he rarely spoke in public meetings. When he did talk, people listened carefully. "General Park is right about one thing," he said. "The aliens have studied our conventional technology, but they don't know about Project Prometheus." The room erupted in whispers. Most representatives had never heard of Project Prometheus, but those who had looked very interested. 15 years ago, Dr. Yoon continued, "we found ruins on a dead planet. In the Kepler system, the civilization that built them was destroyed long ago, but they left behind some very interesting technology. We've been studying it ever since." He activated a holographic display that showed weapons and devices unlike anything in the official human arsenal. "The aliens think they know what humans can do in a fight. They're about to learn they were wrong." Lieutenant Colonel Shin Bo-ra was watching the congressional debate from her secret base on Europa. She commanded a military unit that didn't officially exist, and she was responsible for preparations that no one was supposed to know about. For 50 years, human military planners had wondered what would happen if Earth was invaded by a superior horse. They had developed a strategy called defense in depth that relied on humanity's greatest advantage. They were everywhere. Every human colony had mandatory military service. Every civilian ship captain knew basic combat maneuvers. Every mining station could be turned into a fortress. Every asteroid base could hide weapons and supplies. What looked like scattered weakness was actually a hidden strength. Shin Bo-ra's job was to coordinate the resistance networks that existed on every human world. The aliens saw a young species with limited military assets. They didn't see the millions of trained fighters who lived normal lives as farmers, miners, and merchants until someone threatened their homes. "Send the activation codes to all cells," she told her communication officer. "It's time to show the galaxy what human civilians can do when they're angry." The 72-hour deadline was approaching fast. All across human space, people were making their final preparations. Some packed their belongings for evacuation. Others said goodbye to family members who were staying to fight. Many just looked up at the stars and wondered if they would live to see another sunset. On Luna Station, Admiral Lee Tae-ho was receiving final reports from his fleet commanders. The numbers were not encouraging. Humanity had 37 major warships and perhaps 200 smaller vessels. The aliens had over 800 ships in their combined fleets, and each one was more advanced than the best human technology. "Sir," said his aide, Captain Song Min-jun, "the diplomatic corps is requesting permission to send a surrender message to the alien fleets." Lee Tae-ho looked out at Earth, hanging blue and beautiful in the starfield. His own children lived down there. His grandchildren were in school, probably learning about the heroes who had fought impossible battles throughout human history. "Captain," he said finally, "please send a message to both alien fleets." Song Min-jun prepared to take down the surrender terms, but Lee Tae-ho's next words surprised him. "Tell them that humanity has considered their demands. Tell them we have discussed evacuation and surrender. Tell them we have weighed their superior numbers and advanced technology against our own limited capabilities." The Admiral turned away from the window and faced his aide. His expression was calm, but his eyes were fierce. "Then tell them that our answer is simple. Come and take it." The message was broadcast on all frequencies. Every human in space heard their Admiral's defiant words. On Earth, people gathered around communication screens to listen. In the colonies, families held each other as they realized there would be no retreat. The aliens received the message with surprise. They had expected immediate surrender or at least an attempt at negotiation. Instead, these primitive creatures were actually refusing to be conquered. High Admiral Zelthar shared the message with his war council. The crystal beings found it amusing. "They think their courage will stop our energy weapons," he said with what passed for laughter among his species. Over mine, Grakthul was equally confident. "Biological determination is irrelevant against superior technology. We will demonstrate this truth very clearly." Both alien fleets began moving toward human space with renewed purpose. The Valari hegemony attacked first, just as Admiral Lee Tae-ho had predicted they would. High Admiral Zelthar was impatient to end what he saw as an annoying delay to his conquest schedule. His crystal ships moved through hyperspace like silver arrows, heading straight for Kepler Station. Kepler Station was humanity's biggest mining facility, built inside a hollow asteroid near the edge of human space. It housed 50,000 workers and their families. To the Valari, it looked like an easy target that would demonstrate their power to the rest of humanity. Captain Ryu Dong-wook commanded the station's defenses. He had 6 patrol ships and a handful of mining vessels. Against the 20 Valari, warships approaching his position, it should have been no contest at all. But Ryu Dong-wook had been preparing for this moment for 3 years. He knew his conventional weapons would be useless against Valari energy shields, so he had stopped thinking about conventional weapons. "All cargo haulers, begin your runs now," he ordered calmly. To the Valari sensors, It looked like the humans were trying to evacuate supplies from the station. Dozens of large, slow cargo ships were leaving the asteroid, loaded with what appeared to be mining equipment and civilian belongings. High Admiral Zelthar was pleased. "The creatures are fleeing as expected," he told his subordinates. "Destroy the station and move on to the next target." The Valari ships opened fire with their quantum disruptor beams. The weapons were designed to tear apart the molecular bonds of any target, reducing solid matter to atomic dust. They had never failed to destroy anything they hit. But Kepler Station didn't dissolve. Instead, thick clouds of metallic particles erupted from hidden ports all around the asteroid. The quantum beams scattered and reflected off the particle clouds, creating a spectacular light show, but doing no real damage. "What is this?" Zelthar demanded, his crystal body flashing with anger. Captain Ryu Dongwook smiled as he watched the alien confusion. The particle clouds were made of the same materials that made up asteroid mining equipment. They absorbed and scattered energy exactly like the rocks that human miners dealt with every day. But the real surprise was still coming. The cargo haulers that seemed to be fleeing suddenly turned around and accelerated toward the Valari fleet. They weren't carrying mining equipment at all. They were carrying kinetic kill vehicles, massive tungsten rods designed to punch through anything at incredible speed. Commander Oh Seung-hee led the first squadron of converted mining ships. Her vessel, the Lucky Strike, had been a simple ore hauler until last week. Now it carried the most powerful plasma cutter ever built, normally used to slice through solid rock. "Remember," she told her pilots over the communication channel, "get in close and stay close. These fancy shields don't work well against sustained heat." Her pilots included Staff Sergeant Nam Il-sung, the best mining equipment operator in the sector. He had spent 10 years cutting through asteroids that were harder than any alien armor. Today he would find out if alien ships were any different. The Valari tried to destroy the approaching cargo ships with their quantum beams, but the human vessels were small and fast. They scattered like a school of fish, making themselves hard to target. Several ships were hit and destroyed, but most of them got through. Staff Sergeant Nam Il-sung brought his ship within 50 meters of a Valari cruiser and activated his plasma cutter. The industrial tool was never meant to be a weapon, but it generated temperatures that could melt through solid rock in seconds. The Valari shields absorbed the first few seconds of plasma fire, but then something unexpected happened. The shield generators started overheating. They were designed to stop quick energy bursts, not sustained heat applied at close range. "Their shields are failing," Nam Il-sung reported excitedly. "Keep the heat on them." One by one, the Valari ships found themselves surrounded by human mining vessels that cut through their hulls like hot knives through ice. The crystal beings inside were shocked and terrified. They had never been hurt by primitive technology. High Admiral Zelthar tried to retreat, but Captain Ryu Dongwook's cargo haulers were launching their kinetic kill vehicles, massive tungsten rods, accelerated to incredible speeds, slammed into the Valari ships like cosmic hammers. The aliens' energy shields were useless against simple kinetic force. The rods punched through crystal hulls and shattered the delicate internal structures where the Valari lived. 7 alien ships were destroyed in the first wave of impacts. The Battle of Kepler Station lasted only 2 hours, but when it was over, 15 Valari ships had been destroyed, and the rest were fleeing in panic. The humans had lost 12 ships and 300 people, but they had proven something important. The aliens could be hurt. News of the victory spread through human space faster than light. For the first time since the crisis began, people had hope. If miners and cargo pilots could defeat the mighty Valari, maybe humanity had a chance after all. Dr. Ko Eun-ji was monitoring the battle from her research station on Europa. She was recording everything the alien ships did, looking for patterns and weaknesses. What she discovered changed everything. "Admiral Lee," she reported to Luna Station, her voice shaking with excitement. "I know why our weapons worked. The aliens evolved. In high-energy star systems, their technology is designed to handle massive energy inputs, but they never developed defenses against electromagnetic pulse attacks." She sent her data to every human ship in space. Their computers shut down when exposed to EMP bursts. Shields fail. Their weapons stop working. They're completely vulnerable to our most primitive electronic warfare techniques. Admiral Lee Tae-ho felt a smile cross his face for the first time in days. Doctor, are you telling me that our oldest military technology is their greatest weakness? Exactly, we've been using EMP weapons since the 20th century. To them, it's like being attacked with stone knives. The Thrak Collective had been watching the Valari defeat with interest. Overmind Grakthul was not concerned about primitive human weapons. His bioships could adapt to any attack and learn. From every encounter, the Valari had lost because they were rigid and predictable. The humans destroyed crystal technology with heat and kinetic force, he told his war council. Our ships will simply adapt to resist heat and kinetic force. The problem will solve itself. Grakthul led his biofleet against the human colony. On New Pusan, the planet had 2 million inhabitants and was defended by only 3 human cruisers. It should have been an easy conquest for 50 Thrak bioships. Colonel Jang Woo-seok commanded the planet's defense forces. He had studied the Thrak extensively and knew that their bioships could adapt to conventional attacks. So he had prepared an unconventional response. Major Lim So-young led the most elite Special Forces unit in human space. Her team specialized in boarding actions and close-quarters combat. When the Thrak ships entered orbit around New Pusan, she was ready for them. Remember, she told her soldiers, these ships are alive. That means they have nervous systems. Find the control centers and cut them. Lim So-young's commandos launched themselves from hidden bases on the planet's moons. They used small, fast insertion pods that looked like space debris to the Thrak sensors. By the time the aliens realized what was happening, human soldiers were already cutting through their bioship hulls. The Thrak had never faced boarding parties before. Their ships were designed to fight other ships, not to defend against soldiers inside their own hulls. The bioships tried to adapt by growing new defensive systems, but they couldn't adapt fast enough. Major Lim So-young personally led the attack on the Thrak command ship. Her team cut through biomechanical corridors filled with pulsing organs and living computers. They used simple chemical explosives and steel blades, weapons so primitive that the ship's immune system didn't recognize them as threats. When they reached the ship's brain center, Lim So-young planted charges that severed the neural pathways, controlling the entire vessel. The bioship died like a massive animal, its death throes sending shockwaves through the rest of the Thrak fleet. Target acquired and neutralized, she reported to Colonel Jang Woo-seok. Moving to the next ship, the Thrak bioships tried to adapt to the boarding attacks, but every time they developed new defenses, the human soldiers changed their tactics. The commandos were improvising faster than the ships could evolve. Overmind, Grakthul watched in growing alarm as his fleet was torn apart from the inside. These humans fought like a virus, infecting his ships and destroying them from within. Worse, they seemed to enjoy the close-quarters combat that terrified his own troops. Retreat to minimum safe distance, he ordered. These creatures are more dangerous than the data indicated. The Battle of New Pusan ended with 23 Thrak bioships destroyed, and the rest fleeing toward the edge of the star system. The humans had lost 400 soldiers, but they had saved 2 million civilians and proven that the Thrak were not invincible either. Admiral Lee Tae-ho received the battle reports from both fronts with growing confidence. The aliens were powerful, but they were also predictable. They had ruled the galaxy for so long that they had forgotten how to fight an enemy that refused to follow the rules. Send a message to all fleet commanders, he ordered. The enemy can be defeated. Pass that information to every ship, every station, and every colony.